Hi everyone, welcome back to Rosemaling with Art of Lise. It's been a long time, but I hope you are all well out there, and I'm doing fine. It's just been a crazy 2023. So let's go down to the paper here today, and I'm going to work on some stroke work because the basis of all Rosemaling is your stroke work, your C strokes and your S strokes. So why don't we do some C's and S's and then maybe create a flower or two with some detailing, and just join me on a little journey. All right, let's go down to the paper here. And I've got my table all set here. And I have my, just using paper today, nothing crazy. I've got my wet palette set up, and I am working in acrylics. Rosemaling is normally an oil art form, but there's quite a few of us that have switched to acrylics. And I'm going to work with just a few colors here. You can see I have a variety of reds, yellows, blues, and greens, as well as white and black. I'll list the colors that I'm using down below. See, I've already made a mess. That's a schmutz. So let's put that schmutz away. So let's talk about brush strokes. Rosemaling is based on C's and S's. So what's a C stroke? So let me show you here. I'm going to take a little medium and I'm going to go into my storm blue, and I'm going to go ahead and do a C stroke for you. So I'm laying my brush down and pushing it down flat, and I'm going to pull this brush up and around and pull it down to the bottom. And this is what we call a C stroke. This is very common in Rosemaling, where you have your C stroke and they might be bigger. For example, in a style called Telemark, you typically have a nice big C stroke here. That is the start of your design. This is your root. Now, Rosemaling or Rosemaling is Rusa, flower, maling, painting. Some people like to say rose painting. Maling means painting. And it is based on fantasy flowers, but it's definitely floral in its design. But it also has this root or starting in the land of Baroque with your C strokes, your S strokes, and your cantus carving. So let's go ahead and do a C stroke in the opposite direction. Notice I push my brush down my bristles here, and I'm going to pull that brush around and bring it down to the bottom. Now that really looks like a C because it's an actual C shape that you're seeing here. A lot of C's in my sentences here. But your C's can be nice and rounded like the ones that you see here, or they're simply little strokes that make up petals of flowers. Now, in some art forms we would call these comma strokes, but in Rosemaling these are still C strokes, and we can put them in opposite directions. Now notice I'm pulling them thick to thin, but you can also pull these C strokes thin to thick. So let's show some of those. So I can go ahead on my tip of my brush and go ahead and land down there and pull towards me and give a little spin here at the bottom, and I can get a thin to thick C stroke here. Now I typically do my bigger C strokes from thicker end to thin, and most of the time when I'm doing my C strokes thin to thick, I'm really working on petal shapes of a flower. Well, what do you mean by petal shapes of a flower? Well, for example, here's a petal. Here's a petal. I'm just using monochromatic colors right now. And then I do a petal on the other side. And a couple little petals here with some little strokes here. Okay, these are all done with C strokes. And all of a sudden, I have a flower shape. Notice I'm going and starting at the same point. This would be the sepal. Okay, so these little strokes, whether large or small, all help to create shapes within Rosemaling. The other shape that we use is something called an S stroke. Now, an S stroke is typically something that starts thin, goes down thick, and then comes down thin again. You can kind of see the S shape here. And notice this nice little curve in here. This little curve actually wraps around your C stroke when they join together. But these are very important because they actually form leaves for a lot of our petals and shapes that we do, or our flowers. So our S stroke, going thin, thick, thin, is very important to get down. Now I have some videos in my stash of videos on my channel here, and I'll try to link it up above, where I actually demonstrate the whole process of these strokes. So you can see we have C's and S's. Now I said before that most of the time your S's actually grow off the back of an S stroke or a C stroke. So I know some people will catch me, you're confusing your S's and C's, so I'll say that again. Often you have an S stroke that flows off the back of a C stroke. So that C stroke would start in the same spot and then go thin, thick, thin, and it's almost like this tendril that grows off of it. And sometimes you go back and add a little bump to it so it really gets that leaf shape there. And you can turn that around this way. And you can see that C and that S. Now, how do I take this and actually create a flower with my Rosemaling, with my C's and S's? Well, why don't we jump into some color and let's create a flower. Just something fun to do. Now, brush strokes, the brush strokes that you work on in Rosemaling or in any form, your stroke work just is so important. Here, I'm just cleaning out my brush. So I'm going back. When I'm holding my brush, I am holding my brush about a third of the way back on the handle. So this way I have some more room to make it move. If I hold it up tight like this, I can't go very far. So I need to hold it back further. A lot of times too, so I get more reach with my brush, I actually use my arm as a rest. So my arm acts as a almost like a balance board here. I can balance on this. I can be up higher above wherever I'm painting, and then I can reach wherever I need. I can even use my wrist to roll back and forth, to reach further away from me or to reach closer. And I can even go on my fingertips, which will raise my hand arm even higher, so then I can reach even further. Let's go ahead and create a flower here. And I'm going to stick to my one brush. I'm just going to wipe in between. And why don't we start with a little bit of red earth here. So I'm going to go ahead in my red earth. I am using a medium, especially when you're working on paper, because the paper is so porous. It will suck all that paint right into it. We want to use something that will make our paint flow that much better. So I do use a combination of a retarder medium, a flow medium, and a glaze medium. So retarder medium, flow medium, and a glaze, clear glaze medium. And I use a product from JoSonja Paints by Chroma. This is the paints and mediums that I like to use. All right, so let's go ahead and create a flower here. So, and you're going to notice when I create this flower, and I'm going to make this kind of nice and big, I am going to move my paper around a little bit so I can always pull my brush strokes towards me. Now I'm giving a big C and then a little C. I brought a little vermilion in there. And then I'm going to go head down the other side and kind of close this up. Now, do I have a direct idea of what this flower is going to look like? Well, kind of. Totally? No, not really. I'm just kind of making it up and having some freehand fun time with this. And sometimes that's what you need to do. You need to be able to just experiment. So I am going to wipe my brush in between a little bit, just take a little of that color off. I do like working with a dirty brush, so I don't mind having a little of that other color in there. Now, especially when we're working on Rosemaling, you typically are working on a painted surface. So that painted surface, and look, here comes that S stroke there, pulling that off the back there. That painted surface is sealed with a base coat of paint. So your piece, your paint here that you're working with won't soak in like it does with paper here. So notice I'm just adding some color here. I'm getting a variety of C's and S's. I am adding a little medium to it so that it ends up coming in a little more transparent. Let's put some teal in here. I'm just going to bring a little bit of other color. So that's teal, also with JoSonja paints. And let's bring that color down this way. And maybe a little bit of green oxide here. Just giving it a little pop of color. Ooh, I got a little flippy there. See that little flip? I ended up not slowing my brush down at the end, so I got this little flip. But I'll fix that when I do some detail. Let's go ahead and give a little petal here, maybe a little flower that's popping out just at the top here. We'll make this guy green and teal. Add a little water to my brush. Now, water also works as a medium, so you can certainly use that. Okay. And maybe we'll add, a couple more little teal spots here. I'll just pull some little small C strokes that way. It gives a little flower, maybe one over here. Okay. All right, so that's my basis of a flower. So now what I want to do is I'm actually going to detail it. So this is a telemark flower. So a telemark flower tends to be very asymmetrical and free-flowing. And that's same with the style. Now I'm going to take my brush that I've been using. I have a wet piece of paper towel. I'm going to tuck my brush in here so that if I don't have a chance to clean it and I have plastic wrap around it, that will keep my brush from drying out on me. I'm going to switch to my detail brush here. It's a premium, it's a Kingart 10 knot. It's a 9375. It's a mid-length liner. It's pretty small, as you can see, but I very much like these. Now I'm going to go over to my black paint here that I added some of that medium to, and I mixed that together with my palette knife to make this nice and loose, kind of like wet ice cream, because I want to be able to take my brush and then go ahead and add lipstick to my flower here. So detailing, some people like to say outlining, but we're really not outlining, because as you can already see, I'm going outside of the lines. But detailing is what pulls your piece together here. So I'm using pressure where I'm doing very little pressure on my brush, and then a little heavier pressure on my brush. And I can make these brush strokes very thin if I put very little pressure, light like a feather. Look how nice and fine that line is. But if I put heavy pressure on here, look how much thicker I can get that. Same brush, same distance. It's about the amount of pressure you apply to the brush. Now I am going back, rolling my brush through here, tap it out a little bit. Let's go ahead and give some more detail to this flower here and pull this all together. So you can already see that I'm doing this thick and thin, heavy and light. And notice I cleaned up that little edge there where I wasn't happy with how my brush came through. I came off the back and I actually added a little S stroke there. Let's go ahead, and I'm just working my way around. I can give little bumps and little dots. We can have a little tendril line come out, because you know when you look at your garden and you have these other little sprigs of shoots coming through, so it's not always just your flower shape here. So I'm moving over to the other side. Let's go ahead and add some detail, and a lot of times I will leave some of my background color coming through. So in this case, it'd be the white of my paper. But then it gives me an option to do such a variety of things down the center of this little flower here. So let's go around the outside here. So this is really just a quick little example of some rosemaling, some freehand rosemaling, and it's really about the stroke work. I'm very much about teaching people how to use their brushes and about how to use their detail brush. So whether you're going to rosemall or you're doing another art form or you just want to do it for fun, I really like teaching and showing how to use these brushes in order to get joy out of creating something. So it's one of my things I love to do. So if you're ever interested in taking classes, you can find me at www.rosemalingclasses.com. I'll list that below. Or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Also easy to find. So everything will be written below. Anyway, so aren't these fun? So let's go ahead and finish these little guys here. And I don't necessarily have to paint right over it. I can come outside of the lines a little bit. That's why we don't really like to call it outlining. And notice I keep moving my piece of paper here that I'm painting on, so that way I can pull the brush towards me. I'm at this direction here. So it's much easier to pull a brush towards you than it is to push a brush away from you. Well, we can add a couple little dots here. Oh, the variety of stuff. If you look back at the old rosemaling, and there's so many pictures that you can find on Pinterest. You can find it if you're on Facebook. You can go to Rosemaling group, and there's wonderful examples there. There's wonderful books out there, and the variety is absolutely amazing. And one day I'll show what they used to do to their homes, because remember, Norway's winters are long and dark, and they have to bring the summer inside. Maybe not so much now, but back in the day, back in the time of my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents. So we can add a little detail line on the outside and just bring it out and about and just kind of have fun with it. So thank you all again for coming back and being supportive of my channel. Thank you for the kind words and the outpouring over the years that I've had. And I hope that you enjoy a little bit of a welcome back to Rosemaling to my channel. And if you're new, take a moment to subscribe. I will be having new videos come out. But by all means, check out some of my old ones where I really go over some of the stroke work here. I hope you had a fun time watching my Telemark flower here, and I'll just write down what that is. That is Telemark, T-E-L-E-M-A-R-K. Just one of so many. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all coming here. Hold on, let me bring my face up here. Hello there. And just remember, God is good. It's just paint. And I hope to see you again soon. Take care.